Everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. So what I want to do this morning is continue what I've been teaching for the last 3 weeks, but also we had a retreat before then on this subject, and there are approximately 90 members of our community who are in intensive this summer, focused on this patience, this mind of patience, a patience that comes out of the mind of understanding, that creates a mind of acceptance of what is, so we can be patient. And again, what is it that we understand? That everything is arising because of causes and conditions. So, in the last 2 prior Dharma talks, again in the patience retreat, the 4-day patience retreat, we focused on Shantideva's teachings on patience. But for the last 3 weeks, including this week, I'm using the Order of Interbeing, Being's 14 mindfulness trainings, specifically the 6th training, as our focus. Now, why do I want to continue on this for the 3rd week? It is because I think it is so essential that both among individuals and families, communities, societies, the world, anger is an epidemic. And like other types of epidemics, or perhaps different than other types of epidemics, this one will not eventually wear itself out. This one only continues. And if it is nourished and fed, it only grows. So it is my deepest hope that our community means really all the members of our community and anybody who identifies with it, will really make an effort to really transform the seeds of anger that are within us, and to be very diligent, and we'll talk about that today, in our practice. So we really eradicate, to the best of our ability, this destructive epidemic that has basically been infecting human beings forever. So this can be our contribution. First we do the work within ourselves, and then we model it in our relations. Hopefully we can all bring it into our families, into our relationships. Model it with our colleagues. Model it with how we show up in the world. We do not cultivate anger, nor do we nourish the anger in others or in society. It's very important. And this is something we can do. We may not be able to change everything about our world right now, but certainly this is a place where we can begin. So, 3 weeks ago, since, as I said, the Order of Interbeing, the 14 precepts, have gone through several iterations of more complexity over time, I wanted to begin with the earliest one. And I am reading from the first publication of the book Interbeing from 1987. Probably many of you have not seen this. And they were called precepts then. And again, I believe they've been posted. So, but just for those to remind us, in case we've forgotten, and for those who didn't hear the earlier talks, the sixth precept said, do not maintain anger or hatred. As soon as anger and hatred arise, practice the meditation on compassion in order to deeply understand the persons who have caused anger and hatred. Learn to look at other beings with the eyes of compassion. So very simple. One, it is not our practice to maintain anger. Maintain anger simply means when it has arisen, we don't maintain it. And we talked a lot about how we maintain it. And then it tells us what to do. As soon as anger and hatred arise, practice here, it says the meditation on compassion in order to deeply understand the persons who have caused anger and hatred. So the meditation on compassion means one looks into the causes and conditions of that person and situation, understands the suffering that is behind it. And if one looks at them with the eyes of compassion, all one thinks about is, what can I do to relieve their suffering? How can I be of help? So this is 1987, and the commentary on that version is posted online. And then last Sunday, I read from the third edition of the book Interbeing, which was in 1998. And it reads, and again, it's posted, aware that anger blocks communication. So now we're getting something different. We're bringing in the whole idea of communication. Blocks communication and creates suffering. We're determined to take care of the energy of anger when it arises and to recognize and transform the seeds of anger that lie deep in our consciousness. This is the twofold task. Primary task is when anger arises, to do something, quite simply. Take care of it. And the deeper, more sustaining, transformative practice is to recognize and transform the seeds of anger that lie deep in our consciousness. So many of us have perhaps and this is, again, what anger management's about. This is, the first step is sort of Buddhist anger management, but it deals with the symptoms. It deals when the symptoms have arisen, when anger has arisen, what to do. And again, we need to do something. It can't be maintained because it is very destructive and blocks communication. But the transformation comes when we look to realize the seeds of our anger lie deep within our own consciousness. And then it goes on to say, when anger comes up, again, we're talking about at the relative level where things can be seen. When the anger comes up, we determine not to do or say anything, but to practice mindful breathing or mindful walking and acknowledge, embrace, and then look deeply into our anger. So again, this is like the actual practice. When it comes up, we take responsibility for it. We don't act out, either verbally or physically. But we practice, and here it says mindful breathing, mindful walking. In other words, you do something to take your attention off the stream of thoughts that are sustaining and maintaining your anger. You break away from that. You come back to yourself. You're breathing. You're walking. You don't repress. You acknowledge. You embrace, which means you're not separate from it, and then you look deeply into it. And we talked about that. And then again says, we will learn to look with the eyes of compassion at those we think are the cause of anger. Again, this fundamental misperception that the cause of our anger is outside us, rather than the reason we're getting angry is simply because we have within each of us the seeds of anger. And depending on how developed those seeds of anger are, how much we have worked them and how much they have been nourished during our life, by our own actions of body, speech, and mind, but the environments that we've been in, they will have a certain degree of intensity or strength and a certain characteristics, which is our own. It's different for everyone. Now, this is now the latest version of Interbeing and contains the last iteration. Doesn't mean it won't be revised again. And you'll notice they get quite longer than the original one. They're more packed. And I think part of that is the earlier ones were really just Thich Nhat Hanh's production, coming from his own experience in mind. And these latter ones, there was also committee involvement. So, and if anybody's ever been on a committee and when you try to come up with a final statement, you know you have to kind of, it's a process. So anyhow, but it's all good stuff. So now, and this is the one I want to focus on today, and you'll hear echoes, if not the same exact verbiage, words of earlier ones. But let us look at this. And again, unless you feel that you have totally eradicated anger from your life, it is no longer an issue at all, you've transformed all the seeds, then you don't have to listen today. And also, please know, one of the, I think, the significant thing for many attendees at the retreat and in the prior talks is that when I talk about anger, I talk about a continuum of anger. Many of us think of anger as a kind of a very hot sort of enraged state. And so many of us think that this is, we don't do that, or that happens so rarely that we don't have a problem with anger. But when you see anger as a complexity on a continuum, that only at its most extreme, it's rage, it's fiery anger, it's out of controlness. If you think that's anger, we are wrong. Just like if we think, fire is not, a forest fire, a raging forest fire. Fire is also a match. So anger is also mild irritation, mild frustration, mild annoyance, to irritability, to a lot of frustration, to a lot of things just annoy me. People just annoy me. That person just annoys me. And so when you see it on a continuum, and I called a lot of that more softer stuff, I call that the hum. So a lot of us have a background hum of kind of a way of relating to the world and the people in it and the situations in it and everything with this kind of mild, low-level frustration, annoyance, irritation that also will flare up and will move up the continuum. And to not see that the seeds of the hum are not the seeds of anger is to misunderstand anger. Again, a match can start a forest fire. Not immediately. It just may light a few leaves, catch a few branches. But if left untended and if fed, and anger is something that we feed, we repeat, we remember, we visualize, we have an internal conversation that feeds what was originally just a situation some can become very powerful and strong and last for minutes, hours, days, months, years, decades. So please understand that when I talk about really eliminating anger as kind of a go-to emotion in our life, I'm really a lot for most of us talking about this low hum, this consistent kind of being with life where the low hum is not one of gratitude, appreciation, understanding, compassion, patience, that's not the low hum for many of our lives. That's not, if we pay attention to what the dialogue is in there, we're hearing. It's often again, this one annoys me, I'm annoyed by this, I'm frustrated by that, I'm irritated by that, So that's what we're talking about. That is a resistance to life. That is a resistance to what is. And if you don't think that low hum is not coloring your mind, is not informing your mind states, is not having anything to do with the way you speak and the way you act, you are not understanding the unity of body, speech, and mind, and how they are all dependent on one another. So this is the 6 mindfulness training again from the latest formulation. And it begins. Aware that anger blocks communication and creates suffering. We've heard that before. Ask yourself, do you accept that? Just stop for a second. Do you accept that when you are angry, when you're irritated at someone, that it blocks your ability to communicate openly and clearly, compassionately, intelligently with that person? And that anger has historically led to the creation of suffering within yourself and whoever you've directed the anger at. Is that true for you? There has to be an acknowledgement of that first, before there's any energy behind wanting to change. So take a moment. Is that something we acknowledge? That anger it blocks communication and it creates suffering. That's been your experience from your own expression of it, and also as being the recipient of others' anger. Does that make you happy? When someone is angry at you? When somebody speaks to you in an angry way? Does that nurture wholesome seeds within us? When we are the target of someone's anger, somebody's irritation, somebody's annoyance. Oftentimes we have a lack of imaginative empathy that we really can't really see the effects of our actions of body, speech, and mind. So we often have to go through this exercise of really going, well, what does it feel like when I've been the object of someone else's? Then we get it. Oh, maybe that's how they feel when I do it to them. So take a moment. Close your eyes. What has it been like when you've been the object of someone's anger, someone's rage, someone's angry words? One of the great moments of your life brought you closer to the person. So, Having gone through that exercise, next step is, it says, we are committed to taking care of the energy of anger when it arises. Earlier it said, we're committed not to maintain anger. It's the same thing. So our commitment is not that anger will never arise. We can't prevent it from arising if it's within if we have the seeds of it in us, and they're still strong. But we can commit that we will take care of it when it arises. Remember? That's the surface level. And to recognize and transform the seeds of anger that lie deep in our consciousness. And last week I did talk about the storehouse consciousness. This is what he's talking about. This is where the seeds are. The seeds are in the storehouse, and when they're triggered, they come up. They come up from the storehouse, and they come up in relationship to, what kind of seeds they are, how big they are, how strong they are, how intense they are. So that is the deeper work we have to commit ourselves to. We need to transform the seeds that lie deep in our consciousness. And then again, at the surface level, the surface level means at the scene level. When anger manifests, we are determined not to do or say anything, but to practice mindful breathing or mindful walking to acknowledge, embrace, and look deeply into our anger. Okay, so that's the same exact as the prior one. What does it mean to look deeply? There are many ways of looking deeply. Why are we angry? Last time and at the retreat and other times, we spent a lot of time talking about a lot of the root of our anger is that each of us has the rules of the road. The rules of the road for life, how life should be, how people should be, how I should be treated, what should be happening, what shouldn't be happening. Why am I angry now? Has somebody broken the rules? My rules? About how they can be, how they can act, how things are supposed to be happening. Is that why I'm angry? Am I willing to look deeply into myself and go, what is the seeds of my anger? What is the cause of my anger now? Is it really anger, or am I hurt? Am I disappointed? Am I just frustrated because, life is not going the way I want it to go? Because I can't run everything and control everything. So, looking deeply, you can look deeply and even deeper. Drive all blames into one, it's just because I identify with a self. Self that stands apart from all situations and, and kind of looks at things in the world of separation and goes, it should be like this, this, and this, and this, and this. So there are many ways of looking deeply into our anger. You can look into the historical roots of our anger. Where did I learn to be angry like this? Is this one of those childhood things? Unconscious modeling from those around me, parents or whatever, that this is how I learned how to be angry, what to be angry at. Anyhow, the bottom line, we need to look into it. Again, we want to look deeply into it so we can liberate ourselves. It's not just a psychological insight. It's all in the service of wanting to be free of. And then it goes on to say, we know that the roots of anger are not outside ourselves. Very important. Because if you've been angry in the past couple of weeks, if you've been frustrated, annoyed, irritated in the last couple of weeks, I assure you, we think the cause of our irritation or anger is whatever the situation is that we're angry, irritated, annoyed about. Is that true? Think back if you've been angry, annoyed, irritated. It's always because of that. That is where we go. That's the paradigm of anger. And here he's saying the roots of anger are in ourselves. This is where we look. The roots of fear are in myself. The roots of sadness in myself. There's nowhere else. It all is arising from within. Again, this is something that we become more and more aware of through the process of meditation. Because we just sit in awareness and we just see this stuff arise. I mean, you may have, even this morning, you may have been sitting in meditation, and all of a sudden, what comes up? Some episode from earlier today, earlier this week, or something, that just all of a sudden comes up. The situation, the irritation, the anger, it just comes up. It doesn't even have to be in front of us. Actually, if you think about it, most of our anger, the situation of the anger only happens in a very brief moment of some kind of interaction. After that, we are maintaining it. Anger cannot do it by itself. We are maintaining the anger. We know that the roots of anger are not outside ourselves, but can be found in our wrong perceptions. Again, we've talked about these wrong perceptions, right? Such as we think that everybody should be, marching, to our orders. The world should be the way we want it to be. People should be talking to me the way I want them to talk, or talking to each other the way they want them to talk. That is a wrong perception. That does not understand that I don't have control and everything is arising because of causes and conditions. Wrong perception. A lot of times our anger is just totally wrong perception. We take things personally. Or we only see things through my point of view. Right? As I've said many times, when I'm on 275 and I'm caught in traffic, I might get annoyed because I got somewhere to go and I wasn't counting on it. But when if I'm on the other side of 275 and I look over and I see traffic, it doesn't bother me at all, does it? When I see everybody else is caught in traffic, I'm quite happy. Why? You see? I mean, that shows you that traffic is not the problem. It's my mind. It's myself. That's the problem. So this is the way we need to kind of deconstruct this fabrication of perception that feeds our anger. That's a wrong perception. We know that the roots of our anger are not outside ourselves, but can be found in our wrong perceptions and lack of understanding of the suffering in ourselves and others. People suffer. And they suffer from egocentricity. They suffer from selfishness. Selfishness is aloneness. The person who is self-centered is very lonely. They're in the prison of themselves. They are suffering, even if they don't know it. And if they are acting from anger, if they are speaking from anger, they are suffering. If they're speaking from hurt, they are suffering. If they don't feel loved, they are suffering. If they're afraid, they are suffering. Is that clear? We need to see that beings suffer, and suffering beings act out their suffering, just the way we have. And to acknowledge that is to enter the stream of humanity and acknowledge that we are part of the stream of humanity. We are no better than. And that is very important to acknowledge, to see our own frailty, to see that there's very little out there that makes us angry that we ourselves have not done or have done in the past, maybe not to the same degree of, the intensity of, or whatever, as the other person may have done. But we have the same seeds. And we have thought the same thoughts. And we have said many of the same words. And to acknowledge that is to understand the nature of this human life is fundamentally a life of delusion and suffering, because human beings caught in their strong identification with selfhood, with themselves, caught and endlessly having to feed this ego that always wants and needs and must have, and gets hurt and gets scared and gets, everybody is working very hard to maintain this fabricated self, who's very demanding, always needy, never satisfied. The Buddha called that suffering, dukkha. We know that the roots of anger are not outside ourselves, but can be found in our wrong perceptions and lack of understanding of the suffering in ourselves and others. When we get angry, again, because anger blocks communication. Communication isn't just talking. Communication is the ability to interact, How many of us, when we're angry with somebody, are we acknowledging their suffering? Just think, last time you were angry. Did you even care about the other person's suffering? Just close your eyes. Last time you were angry at somebody. Last time you were irritated. Last time you were annoyed. Did you really give a thought to what's going on with the other person? Anger blocks communication. Anger blocks understanding. Something very radical happens when we're angry. Self is very strong. And those who've researched anger know it's a loop. And once you get in that loop, everybody close your eyes, you know the loop. It repeats. I can't believe he did that. I can't believe she said that. I can't believe. We play it over and over again. And oftentimes, if it was a situation that happened, we visualize it. We replay it in our mind over and over again. This has been very well researched. Anger arousal. Can you see it within yourself? How it begins with an incident and a flash of anger, irritation, we then maintain it unconsciously. We don't even know we're doing it because we have no self-awareness. We don't label what we're doing as I am nurturing anger in myself. That's what I'm doing right now. I am maintaining it. I am intensifying it. And it will grow. Please notice whether that's true or not for you. And if the seeds of anger, irritation, annoyance, etc., come up in a situation, and if we don't immediately do something to transform them, to change, and if we feed them, nourish them, intensify them, they go back down into our storehouse consciousness as strong as when they came up or even stronger. So there is no transformation going on. So you can be guaranteed that it will continue. Transformation occurs when we work, well, we'll talk a little bit more about it, when we work with these seeds to change them. And then he says, and I don't think they've done this in the prior ones, by contemplating impermanence. Brings in the teaching of impermanence. We brought in the teaching of understanding, causes and conditions, the teachings around compassion, understanding someone's suffering. Now it says by contemplating impermanence. We'll be able to look with the eyes of compassion at ourselves and at those we think are the cause of our anger, and to recognize the preciousness of our relationship. So this looks like whoever put this sentence in, it's now focused very much on sort of personal relationships and the harm that anger does in personal relationships, which is a shift. Again, impermanence means what? Everything changes. This moment of whatever the person did, whatever, is just a blip. Just a blip in time. You know, there might have been how many thousands of minutes today, and that situation, that word, that interaction that's causing me to anger maybe lasted 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. And as soon as it occurred, it was over. Everything's impermanent. Why did I fasten on it? Why do I hold on to it and then milk it and nurture it? Why? Because I have an untrained mind and I nurture affliction. I want to be happy, but I nurture affliction. I want to be loving, but I nurture affliction. I nurture anger. I want to be understanding, but I nurture misunderstanding, non-understanding. We're like people who say we want to go there, but we walk backwards. So contemplating impermanence, also even big picture. We're all going to die. Everybody's dying. Everybody's getting sick. You know, it's like, that's big, you see. Death is big. It means everything that's happening ultimately, you know, has no essential meaning at all. All these occurrences, all these successes, all these failures, all these little, you know, at some point it's all over. The play is done. The actors leave and are never seen again. That's kind of putting things in perspective. Putting our relationships in perspective, putting our interactions in perspective. And knowing, as it says in the 5 remembrances, that at the end of the day, in this world of impermanence, of sickness, old age, and death, and constant change, the only thing that really matters is that I am the recipient of the actions of my body, speech, and mind. That's what will stay with me. And right now, if I'm cultivating anger, irritation, annoyance, I am creating an afflictive emotion that will stay with me, that I will carry with me. Is that really what I want to do? When you put things like that, then we're much more, I think, careful, aren't we? Much more careful, much more aware of the actions of our body, speech, and mind. We don't get caught so easily. We don't let all these little things annoy us, irritate us. Where are we hurrying to? You know, we are We're always hurrying, aren't we, in this society? I mean, we're all going to die anyhow. Where are we hurrying to? Why don't we just slow down and enjoy our life? Enjoy our relationships. Recognize the preciousness of our relationships. And then it says, we will practice right diligence in order to nourish our capacity of understanding, love, joy, inclusiveness, gradually transforming our anger, violence, and fear, and helping others to do the same. So this is, right diligence refers to the Eightfold Path, of which one of the eight is right diligence, often translated as right effort. What am I diligent about? What am I making an effort about? And so traditionally what we're doing, and this is the essence of transformation. There are four things we are diligent about. And in relationship to anger and the continuum of anger, the first thing we are very diligent about is we are very diligent about not causing anger to arise. Not causing it to arise. We all these things we talked about cultivating understanding, cultivating awareness of impermanence, cultivating compassion for the suffering of people, etc. Understanding causes and condition, cause and effect. The more we do this, the less we will be causing anger to arise. That's the first diligence. Second diligence is what's already been talked about, is when anger arises, we are very diligent in not maintaining it. We do something as quick as we can to transform it, change it, stop it, whatever practice works for you. But, there is, we're trying to work that it doesn't come up. But when it comes up, we are very diligent to make sure it does not stay in our mind for any length of time. Those are the two things in relationship to negative seeds. The two things on the wholesome or the positive seeds is we are then diligent in bringing up, in cultivating loving kindness, in cultivating compassion, in cultivating understanding, right? In cultivating acceptance. That's what we're very diligent. That's really where we're putting our energy. Because if you think of your, if you think of your mind or whatever as a room, the more beautiful things you have in the room, the less room there is for the ugly things to be there. All right. So if our practice is only, doing our best not to get angry, and when anger comes up, kind of dealing with it, working through it, looking into it, we're really doing only half the practice. The other half of the practice is even more important. We are diligent. We are making effort in the cultivating of wholesome emotions, even if that's hard for us. And I might have said the last couple of weeks, for many of us, this is how screwed up we are. Our afflictive mind states are effortless, right? They're effortless. Right? We don't have to work at being irritated, do we? We don't have to work at being annoyed. We don't have to work at being, we don't have to work at being afraid. It happens so easily, right? Right? But when you go, well, why don't we have a mind of loving kindness and acceptance and understanding and, right, patience? We go, I got to work at that. You see? There has to be diligence there. And we have to acknowledge the only reason that the afflictive hum seems so normal and natural, it's because we have been cultivating that since time immemorial. So we don't have to work it at all. So what we have to do is become more aware and work at not working it. Because for most of us, we don't realize that we're working that low hum of annoyance, frustration, irritation, anger, So we have to become very aware throughout the day that we're working that one, and now begin to be more diligent about bringing up, even though it's not our go-to, gratitude, appreciation, seeing the bigger picture. How wonderful that this is happening, giving me an opportunity to slow down, giving me an opportunity to practice patience and understanding, giving me an opportunity to be less selfish and only think of myself. How wonderful that this has happened. Oh, this is a very different way of looking at these situations that in the past would have annoyed us or made us angry. And then the fourth diligence is when a positive, wholesome mind state has arisen, we are diligent in maintaining it. In the same way, on the unwholesome side, we're very diligent to kind of move them along out of our mind. We are very diligent in maintaining them. Maintaining a loving attitude, a compassionate attitude, a caring attitude for beings. Wanting to be of help. Wanting to say and do things that are nurturing to other people rather than destructive of people. So this diligence. So we gradually transform our anger, violence, and our fear, and we want to help others do the same. So this is very important. I mean, this is, we can have all kind of wonderful, aspirations for the world. We can have all kinds of wonderful, thoughts and feelings and beliefs about how the world should be and how people should be and how everybody should treat each other. We're very good at that. But what we need to really commit ourselves to is to do it within ourselves. Secondly, to really be committed to no longer supporting it in others. So, others come to us with the things, with their annoyances. A lot of times you talk to people, that's all they talk to you about. They kind of go through their litany of what annoyed them today, what irritated them today, what angered them today, and we join right in. I mean, especially these days with the news, and there's people just over and over and over again talk about it. For what purpose? For what purpose? They're just nurturing affliction. And then they spread it. And we support it because we listen. And we join right in. And we don't step back and go, what am I nurturing here? If I want a world without anger, what am I doing over here nurturing anger in somebody else? Supporting anger in somebody else? Is that really, moving the world in the direction I want? Right? So we really think, again, we all have relationships. We have family relationship, we have friends, we have colleagues, Sangha brothers and sisters, what in our conversations, what are we nurturing? Am I really nurturing things that will bring the end of anger in the world, the end of hatred in the world? Am I nurturing things that really nurture understanding and acceptance and compassion? Is that the way I talk when somebody sort of gossips about somebody and blah, 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 blah? Do I stop and say, well, they have their causes and conditions, or maybe they're suffering a lot, or maybe that's, is there something we can do to help this person? Let's talk about that. So we all have opportunities in our life, personal life, interpersonal life, close relationships, family, friends, community, work, society. What am I nurturing? So this is how we begin with ourselves, make sure we are we're doing it. We're walking the walk. We're not just talking the talk. I mean, we're walking, talking the talk. Very important. And then how can we begin to help transform this world, one person at a time. So why don't we stop here? Maggie's on the computer, and everyone at the bottom has a chat icon, right? Chat icon, and if you click on that, that will bring you to what's it called? A screen or a window or something like that, and you can chat in your question to Maggie. And again, try not to make them too long, but I'm certainly interested in sort of having a dialogue with you in this way. Again, because I think this is so important, that we understand this, sort of what's been presented today, but then, take it into real life. So the real life situations, we have a little time, let's talk about it.
Question, is the storehouse an aspect of the individual's ego, causes and conditions, or an aspect of the storehouse, a collective energy shared in human condition?
Yeah, so the storehouse consciousness, and again, I think I said the other week, coming up, I will do a class workshop on Yogacara, which is this really kind of the flowering of Buddhist psychology. But the storehouse consciousness is the repository, it is the storehouse of the impressions of everything that we have done, thought, felt, said, acted. That's like where memory comes from. That's where conditioning comes from. It is not the self. It is the storehouse. It just stores everything. Stores good things, bad things. It has no mind of its own. It doesn't discriminate. It's a storehouse. It's where everything is stored. The seat of self is in another part of the mind, so to speak. But because the self, it distorts experience and makes everything about itself, it certainly puts a lot of self-centered stuff into the storehouse. But the storehouse in itself is not a storehouse. That's why it can be transformed, right? All the seeds there can be transformed. So even selflessness, we can cultivate the seeds of selflessness. And we can, all the generosity, right? That capacity to understand others, not just ourselves. I mean, these are all things that we can cultivate and will be stored in the storehouse, and then they will be coming up more and more over time. But it's very important to understand the storehouse consciousness. Yes. So there's a question, someone who's in the hall. Yes.
Interesting that when we're suppressing the seeds of anger, at the same time we're watering the seeds of.
Okay, let me just say one thing. So let me just, because people can't hear you. So we are not suppressing, right? Because suppressing doesn't transform, but we are not nurturing. So we're not repressing, but we're holding them. That's what it says. We are holding this, we're holding our anger. You're aware you're angry, right? But you're not, suppressing means I'm holding it down like it doesn't exist, I don't want to. So you're willing to acknowledge within yourself, yeah, you're really pissed, okay? But you're holding it in awareness. And if you can't, you're just coming back to your breath for a few moments, like people say, why don't you take a few breaths? Why don't you take a time out? I mean, ordinary people say those things, right? Take a time out. In sports, what do? When things are a little right, take a time out, right? Go take some, now maybe they're teaching them to take a few breaths, right? Just, okay. So
individuals. And read that when you're not nurturing the seeds of anger, at the same time you are consciously or unconsciously watering seeds of goodness.
Right. So that's what you want to do. I'm just, people can't hear you. So yeah. So is this going to be a question, or you're just making it? Okay. All right. So you're saying, and you've read that, you've read what we talked about today, that we are not nurturing the seeds of anger in us, but we are nurturing the seeds of wholesome mindsets. Right.
So, and now you mentioned these seeds are not in the storehouse consciousness, but they are somewhere else.
No, they're in the storehouse consciousness. That's where they're stored. But they come up. Okay. So you sit in meditation, Jose, right? And you say, I'm just going to be totally focused on whatever I'm totally focused on, right? And you notice, as you sit there, thoughts arise, feelings arise, memories arise. They're all arising from your storehouse consciousness. It's sort of like, something like a carbonated drink. It's just, bubbles are bubbling up. Bubbles are bubbling up. I mean, except they're bubbling up and bubbling back down. And what happens to them when they come into consciousness, you see. So even when you're in meditation, it's good practice because you're sitting there, right? And stuff comes up. And stuff could come up, a memory of something that happened earlier, and you see. And if at that moment, when that comes up in your meditation and you don't do anything, you don't go with it, right? You don't feed it. You don't keep repeating it. You are making sure that when that, as they do, they'll go, we say thoughts arise and disappear, but they don't arise and disappear. They arise from the storehouse and they go back down in the storehouse. I mean, as a seed. Okay. So, so this is the place where we can do the transformation. You see? Because if Jose is not feeding that angry thought, and at the same time, he's reflecting on it and seeing the situation with understanding, cause and conditions, remembers impermanence, compassion, the person suffering, he's transforming his storehouse because he's creating wholesome seeds that are now going to go down. And that's the process. Okay? Thank you. Yes, Maggie.
A few similar questions about dealing with other people with anger. How do we help people who become even more angry when we try not to nurture their anger if they feel invalidated?
Yeah, so somebody's really angry about something. If I acknowledge to them, I hear you're angry. Wow, you're really angry. That's not validating them. You see, to me, that's very different, and we have to be clear. If I say to you, wow, you're really angry at this person, or you're really angry at that, I'm just making a statement of what I'm hearing. I'm not saying you're right, and I'm not going to feed it. I'm just letting the other person know, yeah, I hear you. Now, if we then have a conversation that just gets the person more riled up, then I'm nurturing it. I mean, a lot of times when I'm in presence of people like that, I say, I get it. I hear you're really angry. What else can we talk about? I get it. You're angry. That's if a person doesn't really want to look into their anger. It's like, okay, I get it. We don't need to talk about it. Very nice. I get it. Anything else going on in your life? I mean, is that, a lot of times people think I'm validating somebody if I acknowledge, and to me they're very different. Right? And I think that's important that we distinguish between the two. Okay?
Back to the storehouse consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
As babies, our storehouse consciousness is an empty slate, or are there already seeds there?
Well, this gets very interesting, you see, because if you believe in some kind of rebirth, a continuation of life, it is the storehouse that is being, at death, again, this is getting into another whole area, but it is the story, it's the seeds that are being transmitted into the new life. Now, if you don't believe that, then you have, but you buy into the storehouse consciousness, then you would have to acknowledge, but that even, because if you look at things like genes, a lot of these other kind of, we know things that are conditioning, that sort of part of the ancestral genetic pool that we're getting, that have, that have kind of emotional qualities and personality qualities. We could say that's storehouse consciousness, right? And so there's no, the baby doesn't have language, and it doesn't have a lot of experience, but already it has seeds of experience, right? We know that, a child's in utero experience can affect them, right? And we know children, even at a very young age, infants, can kind of pick up on the environment around them or how the environment, the world responds to them. So already their seeds are being nurtured.
A couple about, is there good anger? For example, when you see or experience extreme injustice. Is this something else? What is the proper way to use this energy?
I don't think I've ever given a talk on anger where someone has asked a question, so I will answer again. Yeah, so anger arises, and a lot of times anger arises because there's a perception. Injustice is not just, we don't just perceive injustice in terms of, the big things within our society, that people may perceive. And please remember, we have to be somewhat humble that something that we look at and think is so unjust, somebody else may think, no, it isn't that way. That's the world. There's no uniformity of experience or opinion. That's the world we live in. And that's another whole talk. So again, anger is a natural human experience, a natural human emotion that usually arises in the perception that there's something wrong. Right? To put it very simple, there's something wrong. I'm angry. Right? Now, that something wrong could be a million different things. I can't find my socks, and it's a little bit like, it's always, there's a sense of injustice, like this shouldn't be happening to me. That's why I'm angry. Now, the problem is not that flash, you see, we hear about something, we go, well, that's unjust. That shouldn't happen. Okay. So there's a flash of that. That kind of goes, all right, yeah. Now, okay, I get it. What do you want to do about it? To me, that's the answer. I don't want to sit around and talk about it. That doesn't help anybody, does it? That doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help me. It just, getting myself all riled up, even though I feel incredibly powerful and self-righteous, and I can, type out some vindictive thing and send it out there into the world. Now I feel better. No. It is good. Many groups of people and individuals have liberated themselves from very negative situations, harmful situations, because of anger has alerted them, and it's energizing. But then you act, you see. And anger is not a good emotion to act from, because it's not clear. It's highly emotional. And again, many people, and you see it, the history of social movements, they come and they go. Why do they come and go? Because anger is episodic. They get angry, and then when their anger dissipates, it's back to normal. The people who really move consistently over time are people who have a different sense than anger. Anger is just, we do it all the time, right? You might get it, you might be angry at somebody, right? And eventually your anger passes, right? And then many times you go back to the same situation. You never really deal with anything. You know, the only time you ever deal with it when you're angry. And then it passes, you never talk, everybody makes up until the next time. Right? So it doesn't look deeply. And so we need to look deeply. So again, I understand anger. Anger is energizing. Anger often points us in the direction that there's a problem here. Sometimes big problem, sometimes little problem. Yeah, I can't find my socks. Or, we kill people. I mean, is there anything more unjust than killing another human being? I mean, is there anybody listening to me today who would like somebody to kill them? It's ridiculous. And yet we go around killing people. I mean, that's unjust. Lots of injustices. Poverty is unjust. I mean, everything's unjust. Okay, that's the world we live in. Let's roll up our sleeves and do something about it. But just staying angry and talking, I don't know how that helps. So maybe one more and then we'll stop.
Could cultivating compassion for the people who anger us be a daily practice?
Cultivating for people, yeah, I think it can be very much a daily practice, an hourly practice. I think it is a wonderful practice because we want. You see, that's why in the Bodhisattva training we say, the mud and the lotus grows in the mud. I mean, it is because of these people and these situations that make us angry that we are called upon to cultivate compassion. Or we would probably never do it. We're lazy, right? But it's because of the suffering of anger, the suffering of fear, the suffering of disappointment, all those sufferings that they can motivate us to cultivate the opposite and the wholesome. It feels better for us, it helps us develop, and it's better for the world and better for them. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, if there are people in your life, situations in your life that have historically made you angry, yeah, to do to practice understanding, to practice empathic imagination, where you actually go into that person's mind and life, and you actually live their life from being them. Do you understand them? That they can't help being who they are? And you feel their suffering, you feel their aloneness, you feel their fear, yeah, we should do it all the time. So good. Thank you, everyone.